Hey, welcome. So today we're diving into something that sounds, well, just plain weird. Why is it that our minds sometimes actually prefer being wrong? It doesn't make any sense on the surface, right? But we're about to find out why the explanation that feels the best often beats out the one that's actually true.
Okay, so this is really the whole idea in a nutshell. A wrong explanation can feel better than a right one. Just think about that for a second. It's not about what's true, it's about what we can bear. This one thought is the key to understanding so much about how we think. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack together.
All right, so let's really break this down. You can see the conflict right here. We like to think we're on a quest for the truth, for what's accurate, but at the same time, we're desperate for some stability. And that wrong explanation, man, it gets there fast. It shows up just in time, cuts right through all that confusing noise, and it feels like a safe place to land. Meanwhile, the right explanation, well, it takes its sweet time. It asks for a kind of patience we just don't always have.
So why the big rush? Why does speed matter so much? Well, that brings us to the real psychological cost of not knowing. Our minds crave closure, because being stuck in confusion for too long, it's just draining. It's completely exhausting.
And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. The mind doesn't just dislike uncertainty, it actually suffers from it. It's a genuinely painful state to be in, not knowing who or what to blame, where the cause is, what you should be afraid of. And in that kind of state, a wrong explanation can feel like a mercy. Seriously, it takes this messy, chaotic experience and just gives it a shape. It gives it a story we can actually tell ourselves and hang on to.
So this brings us to this psychological shortcut. It's called premature closure. And look, this isn't about being lazy or just making a careless guess. In the moment it happens, it feels like an expert insight. It feels like you've suddenly seen the pattern perfectly. It shows up right when the confusion is at its absolute peak, and it feels like a total breakthrough, even if it's completely wrong.
Let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out. Think about a doctor's office. A patient comes in with all these confusing symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, you name it. The pressure is on, right? For an answer, any answer. So an explanation like, oh, it's just stress, might pop up. Now that might not be the whole story, not by a long shot, but it does something incredibly important in that moment. It ends the painful uncertainty for both the doctor and the patient. It gives them a simple story, it eases the tension, and just like that, the search for answers stops.
But here's the thing. This isn't just about what happens in our own heads or in a doctor's office. This same exact tendency, it scales up, big time. It ends up shaping everything from public opinion to massive social movements.
You see, in public life, the explanations that really take off, the ones that go viral, they're almost never the most nuanced or accurate ones. Nope, they're the ones that take a super complicated reality and just compress it into a simple story. They give us clear heroes and villains, which feels good. They make judging a situation super easy, which saves us mental energy. And maybe most importantly, they give us a shared story that we can all rally around. They're just emotionally efficient.
And on the flip side, a better, truer explanation, well, that's often a much tougher sell. It asks more from us. It asks for our patience. It demands that we hold a bunch of different ideas in our heads at once, and it forces us to live with that uncomfortable feeling of not having all the answers. It might be way more accurate, but you know what? It's just not as good at soothing our immediate distress.
And this leads us to an even deeper, stickier problem. Once we've grabbed onto an explanation just because it made us feel better, we get stuck. We actually start defending our own mistakes.
And here's the reason why. This is such a powerful insight, seriously. Relief creates attachment. That amazing feeling of relief we got from finally having an answer, it gets emotionally tangled up with the explanation itself.
So all of a sudden, we're not just defending a simple fact anymore. We're defending the story that rescued us from all that confusion. So to question that explanation, well, that feels like risking a trip right back into that painful, uncertain state. We're defending the feeling of stability just as much as we're defending the idea itself.
And you know what? It's not just people. Big organizations and institutions do this exact same thing. They almost always favor simple, manageable explanations because, let's face it, complexity is expensive and it doesn't scale well. A simple story travels way faster through a bureaucracy. And before you know it, what's just manageable starts to masquerade as the truth.
Okay, so is there a way out of this trap? Is there a way to break this cycle? Yes, there is. But it takes a very specific mental skill. It's really about cultivating the antidote to our own craving for those easy answers.
And that skill is called cognitive tolerance. Now, this isn't about being wishy-washy or indecisive. It's a real, practical ability. It's the mental strength to tolerate things being incomplete, to use provisional language, words like maybe or it seems, and to accept the very real possibility that the most emotionally satisfying story just might not be the truest one.
So this brings us to a really practical question you can ask yourself. The next time you land on an explanation that feels just right, just pause for a second and ask this. Is this story better because it actually fits the facts? Or is it better because it just makes me feel less anxious, faster? It's a super powerful way to interrupt that mental rush to premature closure.
A truly good explanation, on the other hand, it has a totally different feel to it. Yeah, it organizes what we know for sure, but it always leaves room for what we don't know yet. It gives us enough clarity to move forward, to take action, but it doesn't pretend to have all the answers. It respects reality.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The biggest, most stubborn mistakes, both in our own lives and in society, they usually don't start with some malicious lie. They start with an explanation that showed up just in time to feel like a rescue from the storm of uncertainty.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? What should we leave with? It all comes down to this final thought. The real test of an explanation isn't how good it feels in that moment of crisis. It's whether it still holds up, whether it remains faithful to reality long after that initial wonderful feeling of relief has faded away. And that is the standard we should all be aiming for.